All right, hi everybody. I know we have a snoozy after lunch crowd. All right. So thanks for coming back on time. Screw the rest of them. No, I'm just kidding. But in all honesty, I do want to address the elephant in the room, and that's I know I'm hosting an all-male panel. Okay, yes, okay. And I do want to say that Beet has done an incredible job of increasing female speakers. 40% of the speakers today, this week, are female, right? And that's probably the most I've seen in a long time. We're still working on attendees, but what we're seeing here is the speakers that are put forth by the companies are overwhelmingly male. So I support Andy and everything that he's doing. What I need you guys to do is go back to your companies and say, cough up some female speakers. So apologies in advance that we don't have more smart women up here, but hopefully that'll get rectified before February, right? Okay. So
hello.
Elephant gone. So Dave, how are you?
You know, Denise, I'm joking, you're 100% right. I mean, you know, at my company, FreeWheel, over half of our leadership team is women, are women.
Can we give a hand for that? Because that's amazing.
Well, thank you, but it's been pretty organic, actually, including our CTO. So we could do a better job of bringing them out to things like this, absolutely. So you don't have to hear from me.
Oh, well, thanks for that. I think you guys are doing a great job. So let's talk about today, Rethinking Linear in a Changing TV Ad Market. That's the title of this section. And what are we doing with linear today, right? What is linear, right? That's one of the first questions. And how are we thinking about doing linear different so that all of the advertisers, all of the agencies, all of the publishers, the streamers, everybody has a better experience? Because I think we've established yesterday and this morning that it's not so hot, is it? So Dave, I'll turn it over to you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on?
It's funny, I was listening to the conversation this morning and kind of threw out all my notes because I think it was pretty interesting. I mean, linear, if we just try to set it in context where it is, we all know that sort of traditional linear ratings are on decline, and that's unlikely to reverse. And at the same time, marketers have allocated, in the US alone, depending on who you talk to, call it $70+ billion against linear inventory this year. And so that's a lot. So it still has, the market would say it's still got a ton of value. So how do you thread the needle between those two things? I think, obviously what is happening is there's massive investments going into, essentially digitizing that inventory, making it behave like digital video, and then unifying the inventory, unifying that supply with real digital supply, so to speak, and then, offering it in a cohesive way. That requires, rewiring a lot of the infrastructure that's been built over decades. But there really is, just probably within this room, I know just from within our own company, hundreds of millions of dollars going to accelerate that change. So people aren't screwing around, this is happening. I think the reason it doesn't feel like it is happening is you probably need to get to some meaningful scale, 50% plus, maybe 60, 70% of American homes that you can reach addressably before the marketplace really kind of comes in. But you're starting to see, pockets of inventory get lit up. We're about to test a first kind of self-serve programmer addressable pilot soon. So things are happening, and I think it's pretty exciting. I think that in order to assess the pace of change, which I think is relative to the challenge ahead and the opportunity, is actually amazing. I was trying to think about when industries get disrupted, there's a ton of noise, and our industry is being disrupted, no question about it. There's a tendency to just think, oh well, all the traditional kind of incumbent players are going to go away. They're going to be replaced by new tech companies. And it doesn't always play out that way. Like if you look at music, for example, 10 years ago, everybody was saying that the record labels were dead. They're very much not dead. They're growing again. They're good businesses. Warner Music's here today. Thank you. I'm excited about Fits and the Tantrums tonight. But the industry went through a reset. There's no question, and I think that's sort of analogous to what's happening in linear. So, I think there are a bunch of things you try to think about. What are the kind of fundamental, like universal truths, and what's just noise? Yeah. And I think there are a couple that we track. Like one is that the TV industry has historically grown. Growth has been driven by the introduction of new advertisers into the space. And that's really important, as opposed to, say, Procter & Gamble spending more money next year. We're seeing, as we light up this supply and unify it, new use cases. And simply just making it targetable means a whole class of advertisers can come into the ecosystem. And that's really exciting. And by the way, the same things that we're enabling means existing sort of the big brands that have been buying TV forever also can do new things and be low. That's just going to put a lot of, I think, demand pressure on the supply. On the supply side, I think what's often missed is because supply is constrained in television, the suppliers have more influence over the pace of change and the shape of change than maybe has played out traditionally in kind of the web world. Not completely. I mean, there's some massive new players like YouTube and et cetera that everybody has to think about, of course. But if you're talking about like the traditional programmers and distributors, these are actually really sophisticated companies who have a lot at stake, who are thinking very carefully about their moves. And I think that's kind of important to keep in mind that they probably have the single biggest influence over how all this stuff sort of plays out. And then finally, and I think to Chris Magel's, the point I think he was trying to get at with his question at the end today, I don't know if he's here, is advertisers are voting for platforms. And the simplicity of platforms and buying platforms, there's outside of a couple of notable players, there's really none of us in the ecosystem have enough reach to deliver a whole campaign. So it's in, I think, everybody's financial interest. There's like a natural gravitational pull to behave more like a platform and kind of come together maybe as sort of a federated platform. And when we talk about all these things, measurement and identity and how we buy, how we sell, all that, there is, you can see it, there is a kind of a coalescing that's sort of slowly happening because that's good for the advertiser. And at the end of the day, that's what's going to matter, even though it's not a direct path. So I think those are kind of like the governing dynamics. I might be wrong, so happy to debate. And then there are some limitations that are slowing us down, but they're the right ones. Like we've got to contend with privacy, we've got to contend with regulation, we've got to contend with just like building technology takes time, all those sorts of things. So I think that's kind of like how we think about the sort of the state of play.
Sure. So let me unpack a few of those things, Dave. So you talked about a few things, like we're talking about some direct-to-consumer advertisers, we're talking about platforms, and then at the end you talked about legal and privacy, which was somewhat of an add-on at the end, but people underestimate the work we put into that, right? And especially as linear becomes data-driven linear, and you have to think about all the regulations that come with data. Do you think it's possible to create a DDL system with all the regulations that are out there within the time frame where it would still be usable?
Yeah, I think we're likely to see, I think we're seeing it like more there too, like a more of a federated approach. We've got like 80 ID solutions in the marketplace right now, but there's not a single one that has enough reach. Right. And I think that's why we've seen a host of solutions, like, for example, BlockGraph, who I know is here somewhere, who are trying to be the glue between all of them. So I think there's a lot of investment. It's obviously key to being able to run one campaign against all these sort of fragmented audience pools. So I think that's probably, if I were going to bet, and I'm often wrong, I would bet on a solution like that.
Great. So back to talking about the direct consumer play. As you develop these platforms, are you developing different capabilities for a business model that is inherently requiring different KPIs, different models?
When you say direct to consumer, do you mean?
So the new advertisers that you're talking about.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I mean, I think we're probably all seeing it, right? Where, whether it's Peloton or whoever, first we've seen, I think, a recognition of like the larger D2C brands realizing that there's only so much traction they can get from just sort of pure performance management, and they've started to buy TV for awareness. And then there's a lot you can do with them today or for them today to manage kind of lower funnel performance. I think it's just going to continue. I think Mike Bologna and I were just chatting about this. Like, I wonder where it all goes because, Facebook is 99% of their clients are small, medium-sized businesses, mm-hmm. right? And more performance-driven marketers who, are able to buy exactly the inventory they want and, are tracking against outcomes. And if you believe that all this inventory becomes sort of effectively enabled like that, do you see, it's probably not 99%, but do you see more of a shift where you're seeing, local advertisers coming and buying national inventory that's just been localized and it's just addressable, and, kind of more performance-based use cases? And does that change? How does that impact the economics of the scene? So.
And then when you're talking about local advertisers coming in buying national inventory, obviously there's pricing ramifications. So are you working on yield management capabilities? Because obviously then you enter into making sure that your publisher platform users are getting their inventory in the most profitable place.
Yeah, I mean, for us at least, we came up in digital, right? And we've been trying to apply that to the linear world and kind of unify everything for our customers. So we were sort of supported, from NBC, we support the digital. We came up as sort of supporting the digital lane within large traditional programmers, and then have started to push that tech into linear. So a lot of that yield management capability already exists. So if you're a seller, you can manage across all your different channels, include your own direct sold. It is interesting when you bring local in, because local advertisers will pay higher CPMs. So it's typically, so it's a transaction people kind of like all day long, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then the business model can effectively be collapsed, and it should be more profitable for the publisher.
Should be. Yes. Let's hope.
Great.
That's a goal.
Well, any questions for Dave before we move on to Adam? No?
Fantastic.
There's got to be one.
I was told there would be no questions.
One more? Okay, so Dave, if you had your crystal ball, right, when do you see rolling out this system that, a platform that will have DDL, unified decisioning, capabilities for D2C? What does that look like on your roadmap?
Oof. I'm incredibly impatient. So, I think the way I think about it is, it is going to happen incrementally, and there will be these inflection points where things click together, and all of a sudden you get scale. So it's the classic, things will go slow then fast. But I think we've been in that go slow phase for a while, and you're starting to see things really click together. When you're behind the scenes and you look at the work that the distributors are doing, like Dish and Charter and others, and then the investments that networks are making, I'm optimistic it's not too far away.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Thanks.
Head back to the pen.